October 11th, 2025, 9:20 in the morning. Inside one of Britain's most secure prisons, a man walked into a cell, stayed for 20 seconds, and walked back out. Less than an hour later, the man in that cell was dead. Ian Watkins, the former frontman of Lost Prophets, pronounced gone at 10:15 that morning inside HMP Wakefield, one of the highest security facilities in England. But here's what makes this story impossible to put down, because what happened that morning wasn't simply a prison incident. According to evidence later presented in court, there had been warning signs for weeks. Threatening notes, a previous attack just 2 years earlier, a prison inspection report flagging rising violence published just weeks before he died. And some people now believe it could have been prevented. This is the full story of what happened inside HMP Wakefield, who did it, why they did it, and the questions a courtroom is still trying to answer. Before we go inside those prison walls, you need to understand why Ian Watkins was there in the first place, because what he did is directly connected to everything that came after. In the late 1990s and 2000s, Ian Watkins was living a life that millions would have envied. Lost Prophets was one of the biggest rock bands to ever come out of Wales, selling millions of records, headlining festivals, and putting out albums that cracked the top 10 across the UK. Their 2006 record went straight to #1. Fans adore him. He had the kind of platform most musicians spend their entire careers chasing. Behind that image, something deeply disturbing was happening. Watkins had been using his celebrity status to gain access to vulnerable women, fans who trusted him. And he used that access to commit offenses against very young children, including infants. Offenses so severe that seasoned prosecutors described them as among the worst they had ever encountered. When police arrested him in 2012, the evidence left no room for doubt. In December 2013, Watkins pleaded guilty to multiple serious charges involving young children, including one attempted rape charge and other offenses against minors. He was sentenced to 29 years with a further 6 on license. His bandmates disbanded Lost Prophets immediately, releasing a statement saying they were heartbroken, angry, and disgusted. The fans who had spent years singing his songs were left with something that simply did not compute. And now he was heading into a prison system that has very clear unwritten ideas about what happens to people who commit crimes against children. HMP Wakefield is not a comfortable place to land. It's a category of maximum security facility in West Yorkshire, one of the most secure prisons in England, and it carries an informal nickname that gives you a sense of its population, Monster Mansion. A significant portion of its inmates, reportedly around 2/3 at its last inspection, consists of people convicted of serious sexual offenses. Watkins arrived there in December 2013, almost immediately after sentencing. From day one, he was a known face. His name had been on every news channel in Britain. Inside prison culture, there is an unwritten hierarchy, and those convicted of offenses against children sit at the very bottom of it. Watkins didn't just enter that category, he entered it as one of the most recognizable prisoners in the entire music country. There was something else working against him, too. The royalties from Lost Prophets records kept coming in, even after he was behind bars, and that made him a target for extortion as much as anything else. A prison officer who later gave evidence described Watkins as vulnerable, not just because of his crimes, but because other inmates knew he had money. That same officer said Watkins had spent around 10 years on C Wing, where he had quietly built up a rapport with the officer disclosing concerns he did not feel safe raising openly. That tells you something important about the atmosphere he was navigating every single day. And then in August 2023, that atmosphere turned violent. On the morning of August 5th, 2023, 3 inmates at HMP Wakefield took Ian Watkins hostage inside the prison. The standoff lasted 6 hours before prison officers were able to free him. The initial reports suggested his injuries were not life-threatening and officially he survived. But what came out afterward painted a far grimmer picture. In a letter written to a fan from inside the prison, Watkins described what that attack had actually done to him: bleeding on the brain and permanent spinal nerve damage. Not temporary, permanent. The man who walked away from that August morning did not walk away whole. If surviving that attack changed anything about his security situation, it clearly wasn't enough. He remained at Wakefield on the same wing inside the same environment that had already come close to killing him. And 2 years later, a formal inspection report into conditions at HMP Wakefield found that violence there had increased markedly. That report was published in September 2025, just weeks before Watkins died. The warning was there in writing, and what happened next raises the question of whether anyone acted on it. The morning of October 11th, 2025 did not begin without context. There is a specific detail that the prosecution laid out at Leeds Crown Court when the murder trial opened in May 2026. Something that sets the stage for everything that followed. The day before the attack, a 25-year-old inmate named Rashid Gedel, known inside the prison as Rico, was moved into a cell on the same wing as Watkins, directly next to him. Gedel was already serving a life sentence for murder. He later told the court he hated sharing a wing with sex offenders, that he had openly told prison officers he would assault someone if he wasn't transferred, and that he believed officers had placed him there knowing exactly how he felt. His words in court: "They are just as much to blame as I am." Whether or not that is true, what the CCTV captured the following morning is not a matter of dispute. The footage shows Gedel walking toward Watkins' cell shortly before 9:20 a.m. He steps inside. 20 seconds pass. He walks back out and hands something to his co-defendant, 44-year-old Samuel Dodsworth, who is serving 24 years for abduction and rape. Prosecutors say Dodsworth took that item and later disposed of it. What that item was would become the central question of the trial. Inside that cell, Watkins had been stabbed multiple times in the head and neck with an improvised weapon. 2 maintenance workers spotted him first. He emerged from his cell with visible injuries, and they immediately called for help. 3 prison officers came to assist. Watkins collapsed onto his bed, lost consciousness, and paramedics were unable to revive him. He was pronounced dead at 10:15 that morning. According to evidence heard in court, Gedel had reportedly told Watkins what was happening before the attack, and why, that this was what people like him deserved. After the attack, as officers walked Gedel past the cell where Watkins was receiving medical attention, he allegedly told Watkins to have a good night's sleep. When officers asked who he thought was responsible, Gedel said one word: God. He also allegedly boasted to guards that they could be talking to someone famous. Both Gedel and Dodsworth deny murder and deny possession of an improvised weapon inside the music prison. The trial opened in May 2026 at Leeds Crown Court. The jury was subsequently discharged, and a retrial has been scheduled for February 2027. That process is still ongoing, meaning the full legal truth of what happened that morning has not yet been formally established. The death of Ian Watkins inside HMP Wakefield did not happen without warning, and that is what makes it difficult to simply close the book on. Former prison governor Ian Atchison stated publicly that Watkins was a high-profile and notorious offender whose risk from other inmates was well known. That's not a complicated observation. His face had been on national television. He had already survived a 6-hour hostage situation and sustained lasting injuries in 2023. He had reportedly received threatening notes in the weeks before his death. And yet, a man with a documented, openly stated hatred of sex offenders was placed in the cell directly next to him the day before he was killed. A homemade weapon was inside that wing, concealed well enough that it was not detected until after it had been used. This inside one of Britain's highest security Category A facilities. Whether the deaths that followed in quick succession, Watkins in October 2025, another prisoner at Wakefield in November, and further incidents at other facilities point to coincidence, systemic failures, or something else remains a matter of ongoing debate. But together, they raise difficult questions about safety inside Britain's most secure prisons. Questions that have not yet received clear answers. By the end of 2025, England and Wales had recorded 7 prison deaths by violence in a single year, a significant rise on previous figures. The prison system has not provided a satisfactory public account of how any of this happened. It would be easy to reach the end of a story like this and feel nothing but distance or something harder than that. What Watkins did was not ambiguous. He sat in a courtroom and admitted to it. His victims are real people who carry what he did to them every single day. They did not get to choose what happened to him at the end. Nobody asked them. And in some ways, the fact that he died inside a prison cell before meaningfully accounting for what he did represents its own kind of injustice for the people he hurt. His victims also failed long before 2013. South Wales police received complaints about Watkins' behavior years before his arrest. Officers were later investigated for misconduct in connection with how those complaints were handled. The full story of how a man committing these offenses was able to continue for years while warnings sat in police files never received the reckoning it deserved. The remaining members of Lost Prophets said everything that needed to be said in 2013 when they walked away from the band entirely. There is nothing more they owe to the story. On October 11, 2025, 12 years of a 29-year sentence ended inside a cell at HMP Wakefield. A courtroom in Leeds is still working through what the law makes of it. A retrial is set for February 2027. The prison system is facing questions it cannot deflect with a press statement. But the only people in this story who never had any choice, who never had any warning, any power, any ability to protect themselves are the ones Ian Watkins hurt before he ever set foot inside a prison. Their lives did not end the morning he died. Those lives were still being lived the moment you pressed play on this video. That is the part of this that actually matters.